Oh boy. Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, I'm talking about Underworld's Drift Series 1. Specifically, episodes 4 and 5, the sampler, and the bonus tracks on the box set. A lot of stuff. Alright then, so, this video is picking up from where my last discussion on Underworld's Drift series left off. I did a video discussing the first 3 episodes, Dust, Atom, and Heart. I've linked that video in the description. Posted that at the beginning of May. It's been 6 months since then, and they've released 2 more episodes. The 4th EP called Space, and the 5th one called Game. And they've capped it off with a massive box set called Drift Series 1. Making a 10-track sampler of the series so far that also sort of doubles as a studio album if you want. And yes, I did say so far. They're planning on continuing with Drift for another year, which... You know, honestly, I'm game for that, because this entire first year of Drift has honestly been one of my favorite things to come out of 2019, period. At the absolute worst, Drift has been either pleasant wallpaper techno or some interesting left turn that pushes them out of their comfort zone, but at its best, they've put out some of their best material since the days when Darren Emerson was still on board. Several tracks came out of Drift that are legit on par with some of their classic material for me, often evoking that era without ever feeling like they're directly ripping it off. You wouldn't think that releasing so much music so quickly, adding up to a project that's now roughly as long as Outakker's LSEC 1 through 5, not including bonus tracks, would work as well as it did. But it's reinvigorated them in a way that I don't think anyone would have been able to predict. There's just been so much good stuff. So, I guess to recap my thoughts on the first 3 episodes. Episode 1, Dust, probably my least favorite now. They were still finding their footing at this point and hadn't properly gotten in the right rhythm yet. Most of the tracks on here have been topped in various ways by later tracks in the series, though that very first track, Another Silent Way, is still great. Episode 2, Atom, I considered good enough to be a standalone studio album from them, if you want. It's still probably my favorite episode in the series, mainly thanks to its massive 47-minute closer, Appleshine Continuum, but none of the other 5 tracks were bad either, and the shortest one, Sonya Mode, even got a longer version like I wanted, called the Aditya Game version, where Carl Hyde rants about late-stage capitalism. I am on board for that. And this version felt like it was just the perfect length, too. And episode 3, Heart, initially my least favorite of the episodes, but was better when I came back to it, has 2 big keepers with Custard, Speed Talk, and Poet Cat, and the other tracks are all cool in their own ways. But on to the stuff I haven't talked about yet. Next up, we got episode 4, Space. Now, you know how I said that Atom was still my favorite episode? That may still be true. This episode doesn't have a 47-minute epic that never got boring, but damn if this episode doesn't come close. I really liked every track on this episode. Probably the most easily digestible episode so far, and the one that most plays to all their usual strengths. Listen to Their No is this big triumphant opener that totally fires it all on all cylinders, meant to be all festival ready and elicit that kind of burst of pure joy that something like 2 Months Off does. Like, it's not as good as 2 Months Off, of course, but it's still freaking great. I think it's about on par with Low Burn from Barbara Barbara. It's better than that. I can see Listen to Their No quickly becoming a go-to live staple for them. I think it kind of already has. Anyways, we then got Shuffle Test, which is this cool tech house IDM kind of blend. There's parts where Carl Hyde is saying push, push, push. Gee, I wonder if he's referencing Push Upstairs. Well, this track sounds nothing like Push Upstairs otherwise, but whatever. And yeah, while the sound of this track isn't as soaring and epic as something like Listen to Their No, it's kind of more subtle and headphone friendly, I guess, but has a steady evolution, stays interesting, maintains a steady groove the whole time that kept my foot tapping. Solid track. And that's not even one of the big favorites from this EP. But you gotta have some more variety in there than just your usual techno fare, right? Well, they made sure to change it up, because next we got 100-Weight Hammer, which is a hell of a left turn if I ever saw one. Starts out with this weird guitar noise just plucking away and barely even playing notes at all. Then a breakbeat comes underneath it and you got some synth string section in the background too. And then you got this weird, high-pitched vocoder voice going, I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish, 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 wish. And Carl Hyde rambling right at the forefront of the mix about how he wishes he was a bird. Yeah, this track is really freaking weird. One of the weirdest moments in the whole series, but I still like it. It sounds really good, and those string sections give it a cool atmosphere. And you also got Doris, a quick little ambient adventure where you just got some fairly minimal synth notes and chords and stuff. Definitely nice to have for pacing's sake. Good breather track. This track is also apparently part of a bigger project called the Manchester Street Poem Installation Score, which had proceeds going towards helping homeless people, I think. It's nice. I haven't listened to that project in full. I just kind of sampled around an unofficial upload someone posted on YouTube. It seems to be pretty cool, though it's not a fully ambient project. It's got several techno tracks on it too. Didn't grab my interest that much, but whatever. Going back to the EP. Next track is Altitude Dub, another interesting offbeat sort of track that sounds really cool. Got this kind of herky-jerky random drum pattern, bit IDM-ish. While on top you got blends of ambient synths, acoustic guitar plucking, and weird exotic sounding violin solos. And maybe even some saxophones in there as well. And Carl Hyde singing is pretty solid too, and doesn't have any weird off-putting lyrical moments. Really neat blend of sounds on this one. As far as some of the more laid-back moments on the series go, this is one of the definite highlights for me. And finally, this episode ends with Border Country, another collaboration with O-Phase, and oh my freaking god. When this track dropped, I had people bugging me on Twitter having been mind blown by how hard this track went. And the hype is absolutely justified. This is one of the biggest bangers in the whole series. It just continually builds up and intensifies and continually keeps you on the edge of your seat. Then just as it sounds like it's wrapping up and toning itself down at the end, it throws one more big hard-hitting climax in there. My god, this track is absolutely epic. The groove on this one might be on par with something like Juanita Kiteless to Dream of Love. I don't think I can fully describe it in this video, just go listen to it. Like, if you only ever listen to one track from this entire series, I would say listen to Border Country. I think it's got the potential to restore the faith of people who think this band lost it the second Darren Emerson left. Overall, this episode of Drift is rock solid in my eyes. It's fairly short, gets in, gets out, delivers 6 really solid tracks, starts really strongly, ends maybe even more strongly. Well-paced, it's a great EP. Not much to say, Space is a solid 8 for me. So now let's talk about episode 5, Game. This episode is not as good as Space, and if you happen to be listening to all the episodes in order, you'd probably be burnt out at Underworld at the end of this. Do not listen to this entire series in one sitting. I think that should go without saying. But with that in mind, this is a pretty solid collection of tracks too. Well, it has a bit of a rough start. The opener, Toluca Stars, is kind of a rollicking, down-tempo sort of track. It's cool enough, doesn't overstay its welcome, even at 10 minutes. But it doesn't really stick out much. It's not better than Altitude Dub. And then there's the weirdly half-assed song fragment, Mile Bush Pride. Might have been fine if it had actually been fleshed out more, but it's just Carl Hyde's bored-sounding rambling with stutter edits and a fairly basic techno beat underneath that doesn't sound all that interesting. And it's not even 2 minutes long. It feels unfinished and mostly forgettable. Guess that was an off week for them or something. Thankfully, not only is that track, that okay track, probably the worst track in the whole series, the rest of this episode is good. Imagine a Box instrumentally sounds like a cross between Shuffle Test and This Must Be Drum Street. Mostly techno, but with a slight tinge of 80s thrown in there. It's propulsive, it's fun, there's these little moments of Carl Hyde harmonizing with himself that let this track go the extra mile for me. Woo! It's a good track. Tree and Two Cares, that's also fun. It's not the kind of track that really gives me a blast of joy exactly. It's pretty subtle, it just has a bunch of stripped back, playful melodies throughout most of it. And it doesn't have a lot of progression until like the second half where you get some progressions of pads and some saxophone licks near the very end. Very low-key track, but I don't know, there's just something about this one I find charming. Despite how simple it is and running on for 13 minutes, it's not a track that ever got grating or wore me out in any way. It's a nice, pleasant little track that has a unique feel to it and puts me in a good mood. I think it's a personal keeper. Though you could also tell me this track is boring and I would get it. Anyways, you got Give Me the Room, another collaboration with O-Phase, another fairly dark sounding banger. Goes Hard is a lot of cool acid synths in the back half too. Really good track. Though I wouldn't call it a huge personal favorite since there's plenty of other similar tracks in previous episodes that sound similar to it, like Thread of Rain and Border Country, I guess. Personally prefer those. But yeah, that is definitely another good track. And for how they closed out this episode, and Series 1 as a whole, it's another random out of nowhere left hook. The last track on episode 5 is a bizarre novelty track called STAR. It's basically a frantic drum and bass track where Carl High plays some kind of rhyming game where he name drops a bunch of celebrities and historical figures and fictional characters and whatever. This one really threw me off when it came up for the first time. Wasn't really expecting the first thing I hear on the last track of the last Series 1 episode to be Hyde's pitched down voice barking out, "Each beach, pear, plum, I spy Tom Thumb in the woods. I spy Robin Hood in the cellar. I spy Cinderella at the bowl. I spy Henry Hall," and so on and so on and so on. Very strange and intentionally off-putting track, I think, but I kinda love it. It's so completely bonkers, and that instrumental being so much more fast-paced than anything else in the series was a real breath of fresh air. Also like how it brings in some melodic pads and syncopates the rhythm of Hyde's voice at the end too. Good stuff. But yeah, overall, this episode may not be amazing. By this point, some of their techno formulas are starting to show a bit and not feel as consistently engaging as earlier moments could be. But it does still have quite a bit to enjoy here. I think there's more good and or interesting stuff here than Dust or Heart, and they do bring enough interesting ideas to justify themselves. Probably feeling like a 7.3 on this episode. So now it's time to talk about Drift Series 1 Sampler Edition. I need to first say that while I can see value in checking the Sampler Edition out if you've never heard any of the regular Drift episodes, I wouldn't really consider it like a greatest hits or showcase of the best material the series had to offer. It's an introduction. It's a solid introduction if you want to dip your toes in before diving in deeper. Has a couple of the essentials. It's got Appleshine. That's a good opener. Got Listen to Their No and Border Country. Absolutely cannot skip those. I can imagine a Box is good. Scheifel Test is good. Got Custard Speed Talk as its closer too. That's a good pick and fitting placement. There are also some weirder tracks they went with to add variety, like they included the single Brilliant Yes That Would Be that they released before this whole series got started, which was basically this ambient piece with like a long extended guitar solo or something like that. Cool stuff. And they included STAR, or a new version subtitled Rebel Tech. I'm theoretically on board for that. It certainly livens up the track listing, though it also has like this new repurposed instrumental that is not as good as the original. The last two picks I'm less enthusiastic over. I don't know if I would have picked This Must Be Drum Street. That track is kinda dumb, but it is at least an interesting pick and a good sounding one. Also the inclusion of Mild Bush Pride is a head scratcher since, again, that's probably the worst track in the series. But if you go in knowing that that track's unfinished sounding length and lack of development is not the norm, it would be perfectly fine as a filler interlude. Again, it's not like annoying or anything. But yes, obviously this is a sampler. If you take the sampler as a main studio album, it's still pretty good, definitely better than Barbara, and I don't know if it's better than 100 Days Off. I think 100 Days Off, I'd still probably give the edge to that. But I would still urge people to dive into the series proper, because there's a lot more good stuff that this sampler does not cover. And now they have this big box set that has a whole bunch of bonus tracks that you can listen to on Spotify. And yes, I kind of wrote most of this video before learning this was all going to be easily available to listen to. So, alright, let's talk about the bonus tracks. I'll be as brief as I can, though no promises. So, episode 1 has 2 new tracks. There's a 13-minute, 3-part suite including Another Silent Way, Drift Poem, and Better Than Diamonds. Pretty much this whole suite follows the same backbeat and core musical elements of Another Silent Way. I already talked about that track, and the whole thing is pretty cool, because I like that first track. The other bonus track on here, One True Piano Need Hand, it's basically Brilliant Yes That Would Be again. It's a pure ambient piece with hyper distorted guitar soloing on top. It's cool, but it's just kind of the same track again. Oh yeah, and Brilliant, yes, that would be. It's also on episode 1, and it got extended out to 10 minutes, which is cool. Episode 2 switches out the original Sonya mode with the improved Aditya game version. Good. And Appleshine Continuum is taken out in favor of a new version of Appleshine subtitled All of the Lights. Don't worry, Appleshine Continuum isn't gone. It's tacked onto the very end alongside other collabs with the next. We'll get to that. But this new Appleshine version has some new vocal melodies from Hyde. Starts out mostly beatless too. It's fun. And there's another bonus track called Roof Off. It's a kind of dark, semi-abstract thing with off-kilter bass lines and ambient pads and the usual thumping techno beat. And Hyde's ramblings about being 100% recycled. That's another good track. Episode 3 is 2 more bonus tracks, both completely original this time. Got a quick 3-minute number, Do Breaker Strip. Semi-experimental squeaking beat with pianos, ambient pads, Hyde moaning about whether that voice is in his head. Pretty interesting. And 7 drone music has a dark, whirring engine of a beat underneath, and Hyde's spoken word on top. He name-checks Thread of Rain. That's solid. I should mention, even though these are all like bonus tracks, they don't sound lower effort than any of the regular episodic tracks. They're all good too. That was actually a big surprise for me. But yeah, these are good. Anyways, episode 4 only has 1 bonus track, Big Bear. It sounds something like in between Scheifele Test and Imagine a Box. Got some fun bleepy melodies here and some driving groove and Hyde name-checking a lot of colors. Fun track. But episode 5, out of all the episodes, I think was the most improved by including the bonus tracks. There's 3 of them on this one. You got Doscentitos, a smooth, jazzier piece with laid-back drumming and saxophone solos and a couple of DJ scratches here and there. That was really good. You got the 80s-ish banger, 2 arrows, big stabbing bass line, synth string section, Hyde's distorted vocoder voice, that one goes hard. And finally, you got a stripped-back ballad, A Moth at the Door. It's really nice and heartfelt. Hyde has tons of vocal harmonies in the beginning, sounds like a full a cappella group where he's the only member. And in the second half, it switches into like this Gregorian chant / opera thing. How about that? Oh, and there's one more. You know how I said the last disc of this thing put all the next collabs together? It got A Very Silent Way, Appleshine Continuum moved here. The latter unfortunately cut down to 34 minutes, but whatever. I haven't heard that cut. I'm sticking to the 47-minute version. But there's one more bonus track here, Altitude Dub Continuum. Yeah, that track from episode 4, given the same treatment as Appleshine and stretched out into a 31-minute instrumental monster, with more ambient pads and esoteric solos and jazzier live drums, continually getting more abstract and more ambient as it goes along. Pretty damn awesome. So, final thoughts on Drift Series 1 as a whole. Obviously not every track to come out of this series was solid gold, but nothing was worse than okay, and the okay tracks are honestly not even that common. Like, I posted on Twitter the track listing of an entire theoretical double CD set that I put together out of my favorite moments from the Drift series, 2 continuous mixes lasting about 70-something minutes each, and this is it. It is worth noting that I put this track listing together with the mixes in mind, because of course I ordered them in such a way that they would transition together well, and I can't share the mix I made for obvious reasons, but I did make a Spotify playlist with this custom track listing that I will link in the description. This 2.5-hour set of 14 tracks is how I'm going to keep Drift Series 1 on my iPod. They form an album that, to me, is roughly on par with the stuff they did in the Darren Emerson days. 2.5-hour album that I can listen to in one sitting and not get sick of Underworld at all. And I don't think this even covers all the good stuff. I would just as much recommend people delving into the series proper themselves and picking out their own favorites to keep. Just think about that. Underworld just released a box set that's almost 6 hours of material, all made within the past year, and I felt like 2.5 hours of it was the bare essentials for me to keep, with everything else still being good enough to merit checking out. I think other people can find different favorites and keepers from mine, And Drift isn't even over yet. They plan on letting this go for another year. They've already released enough good stuff in this first series alone to basically make up for a lack of compelling new material in this century. I would have been perfectly fine with them stopping here and taking a nice long break. They've certainly earned it, but nah, they're still going. I guess we'll see how Drift Series 2 turns out. Hopefully they keep up the same level of consistency, because this first series has been one of my favorite things to come out of 2019, and made this year maybe even the strongest year for Underworld ever. And that's it. Drift is amazing. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. There are some people you want to add yourself to that list or make me a review something. Like, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.